the purpose of inbound is to take an unidentified customer and turn them into an identified customer. And we're talking a lot about the integration of activities. So you probably can't consider inbound as an isolated channel of activity any longer. It's got to be part of an integrated activity that draws customers through the top of the pipe to the bottom of the pipe. So you have to involve the sales team from the very outset to make sure that they're bought into the strategy that you've adopted, and therefore they're ready and prepared and enabled to take up responsibility for qualifying that lead further once you hand it over. So what tips do you have for CMOs in other organizations that are struggling with that integration with sales to drive that type of sales enablement activity?
The only thing I would pick up on what you said just in phrasing the question is, I wouldn't say that the person who you're bringing in through inbound is unknown. You might not know the name or the specific company, but if you don't know the profile, the type of person that you're after in the first place, then as we were saying before, you fall at the first hurdle.
What I would straight away say, David, of course it's a lovely thing to have that you've got an unknown becoming a known and then going through the funnel. I think very often we are tempted to make that mistake that once somebody is known, we think, okay, fine, that's part of the safe set and can sort of be nurtured some way, but our focus is still on the unknown. I think nowadays, and I work in an industry in financial services in B2B where our sales cycles are super long, it's much more important to work with our known customers and to make sure that you nurture your known customers. You treat them as all the time as like a new customer. And if somebody else then comes into the franchise that also fits then the criteria, that's fantastic added value. But my top tip for a CMO would be work with your existing customers, get deeper relations, because then you get advocacy as a result of it naturally. No programs needed.
I think you mentioned sales enablement as part of your question as well, and I think that's one of the critical ingredients, because now we're talking about inbound as one of the ways that your customer is going to interact with you. But the truth is, it's all the channels and how they're going to work together. And I think we've all worked in organizations where what the sales guys might be using as their content and story may be a little bit different to what we're using in marketing, and maybe a bit different to even what some of the sales specialists might be using, or so there is an opportunity here to do one of the things which I always think is one of the fundamentals we should all be doing anyway, which is, what is fundamentally our messaging and our story that we're trying to take to market, and how does that relate to the solutions that customers actually end up buying? Because quite often that is a disconnected set of things. And so there is a whole kind of discipline here that needs to come in. And it's across the business, and it's to do what is quite hard work often, is to really do that messaging alignment, story alignment, all the way from the top, to the last mile, so that you can actually engineer the customer journey in a meaningful way across all of those touch points.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, because I think it sort of extends the role that marketing and communications actually plays. So we've seen probably for the first time in the last year or so that marketing now has slots on the sales training academies, for example, and we will run sessions. Sometimes they'll be about the content that we're running and giving salespeople those threads so that they know the story that's being told. But other times it might be speaker training or all the different types of skills, but we'll be doing it together as a team. And exactly to your point, you have to have one look and feel to the customer. And that's part of the reason we're starting to do that type of thing. So when you deal with company X, this is how company X behaves.
Exactly.
I think that's massively important for us. And as an agency, obviously, we're highly adept at generating volumes of leads and all those kind of things, either through outbound or working on inbound. But where the companies fail or succeed is in that connection between a lead generated or whatever and how that salesperson integrates. So we talked about it in the last question, but the sales team and the marketing team being super integrated, the messaging needs to be super integrated so that when they have downloaded a white paper or whatever it might be, or whatever action they've taken to get to the sales team, the conversation is continuous and matches the customer expectation. What we often see issues arise with clients is where it is a cold stop here and a very different approach. So it resonated really well with us. One of our clients, global messaging is all around being a partner. Yeah. And if you then have a sales team that are very mercenary in their approach to that, immediately they've spent all this brand work being a partner, and your sales team is destroying all of that immediately. So they've actually worked very hard on making sure that the partnership kind of idea from their brand work flows all the way into what their sales team are doing as well. So the people feel that, live that, and therefore are much more able to convert.
It goes so much further though than just the integration with the sales team. I mean, you've actually got to, like as you're saying, the message has got to be based on what you're selling, and then you've got to deliver it, because otherwise, you've got a problem with, as we all know, the best salespeople in our world, who are our current customers, hopefully selling to others as advocates.
Right.
And if you miss that messaging from the top, or you don't deliver on what the promise is, whether it be from sales or from marketing, the way that message is being delivered, then bad NPS scores, no advocacy, and it's a massive problem.
There'll be plenty of customers who will be able to point out what's not true about what's being said at any point.
Exactly,
right? So,
and then my concern is that you put a sales team together and a marketing team. You come up with that message, and you think, okay, we're on the money. You're going to be far from it if you're not involving support, if you're not involving product team, if you're not involving the delivery team, and I think that's just. It's hard to coordinate everything, but if you genuinely want to have that thread. It's mandatory.
Interestingly, sorry, a quick point. Just one thing that we've noticed a big trend on, obviously, as an agency, we do a lot of brand work and brand campaigns and brand propositions and stuff. It used to be, here's our external brand and here's our internal brand, and they were quite different. Now, a lot of the work we're doing is how do you actually have that consistent brand across everyone, so that the person in the sales team feels the same as your customer, feels the same as the person in support, feels the person in marketing, so that communication is holistic in its approach. And you're absolutely right, if you can't deliver that.
I was just going to say, it's a short thing. We actually went through an interesting exercise ourselves. We actually implemented our own software. It took 6 months, and it took a lot of heartache for all of the people involved. But actually going through that process and walking the mile in your customer's shoes, it changes everybody's behaviour, and it was a real culture shift for us as an organisation, not just for the people who are implementing, not just for the way that the sales guys talked about, but even the way that some of the people on my team now behave when they're designing things and they're looking at the different messaging. It was a lucky opportunity for us, or a serendipitous opportunity for us. But I think if you can instill that journey or that experience for your people to actually go through the customer journey, it just has people have a real epiphany.
I'd like to round up what Tim said about the external and the internal brand. That's why when we're talking about inbound marketing, I think we should even have in mind the sort of inbound marketing exercise. What do I mean by that? Inbound marketing is for customers and non-customers to take them with content on a journey to end up on a target web page. Think about the fact that you should do this in your company as well. Don't treat it separately and saying, we've got an information portal that's different. I treat my internal customers as my external customers to lead them to the same way. That's why I say inbound marketing. You need to make sure that you equip your advocates with the same information, and not by telling them you have to read, by treating them like customers. Say, well, you happen to be part of this company, but I treat you like a customer as well, so that you then take the journey as a natural advocate faster.
It's a really good point. My experience is that when you're looking at integrated campaigns, not just on a local basis, but when you're talking about the globalization, your audience is much more than just the end customer. It's got to start with the customer, but then you've got to think about the integration of sales, the integration of product, the way you treat that internal audience as a customer. They have to become part of your messaging platform and your audience and your deliverables, because otherwise you're not going to get a market-driven proposition that's been designed around a specific customer need and is then communicated effectively and consistently by a sales team that understands what to say when they talk to a customer. And you cannot balance all those levers if you don't start off with considering your internal audience to be as important as your external audience.